The sound wasn't loud, but it was all wrong. A thick, wet thud followed by the sharp, musical crack of something ceramic breaking. It sliced through the soft hum of our Upper East Side townhouse on a Saturday morning. I froze, the coffee cup halfway to my lips. "Marjorie?" I called out, my voice tight in the sudden silence. No answer, just the frantic beating of my own heart. She'd gone up for her bath 20 minutes ago. Eric had left earlier, a mumbled excuse about a last-minute client crisis out in Westchester. A rushed kiss on my cheek that didn't quite land. I'd been enjoying the rare quiet, the sun painting long stripes on the polished oak floor. "Marjorie!" I yelled again, already moving, the coffee forgotten, sloshing onto the New York Times. I took the stairs two at a time. The door to her and soot was closed, but a faint, sinister haze seemed to seep from underneath it. Not steam. It smelled metallic. Wrong. "Marjorie." "I'm coming in." I tried the knob. Locked. Of course. She valued her privacy. "Marjorie." Panic, cold and slick, started its climb up my throat. I threw my shoulder against the door. Once. Twice. The old wood around the lock splintered with the third impact. The scene hit me like a physical blow. The air was thick, hot, and cloying with a smell I now recognized at gas. My mother-in-law, Marjorie Davidson, a woman of quiet grace and stubborn independence, lay crumpled on the black and white tile floor like a discarded marionette. Her favorite lavender robe was tangled around her. A shattered soap dish lay near her head. The ancient water heater in the corner hissed. A low, malevolent whisper. "Oh, God, no, no, no." I dropped to my knees, the tiles cold through my yoga pants. I fumbled for her wrist. A pulse dot thready. Faint, but there. Her skin was pale, almost waxy. "Marjorie, can you hear me?" "It's Kimberly." Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. A faint, wet rattle came from her chest. "CPR. Call 911. Clear the air." The training from a long ago community class clicked in. I scrambled up, my legs wobbly, and wrenched open the small window above the toilet. Cold February air rushed in, battling the toxic heat. I ran back to the hallway, grabbed my phone from the pocket of my hoodie, and dialed with trembling fingers. 911, what's your emergency? A calm, female voice. My mother-in-law. She's collapsed in the bathroom. I think it's carbon monoxide poisoning from the water heater. She's not responsive. She has a pulse, but she's not breathing well. 174 East 78th Street. Third floor. Hurry. Please. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me. Is she on her back? Yes. I need you to check if she's breathing normally. Tilt her head back. Listen and feel for breath. I followed the instructions, my ear close to Marjorie's mouth. The rattling was weaker. It's shallow, really shallow. The ambulance is 2 minutes out. Can you get her onto a firm surface if you need to start compressions? The floor is firm. I'm ready. My voice sounded strange to me, detached and steady, even as my insides were liquefying. As I waited, poised over her, my thumb hovered over my phone's contact list. Eric. He needed to know. His mother. I hit the call button, putting it on speaker as the 911 operator kept talking. It rang, and went to voicemail. You've reached Eric Davidson. Leave a message, his professional, polished baritone. I ended the call and tried again. Same result. Ma'am, are you still there? The operator asked. Yes. Sorry, my husband isn't answering. Focus on your mother-in-law. Help is almost there. Sirens, blessed and screaming, pierced the morning. Moments later, heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. 2 EMS techs, a man and a woman, filled the doorway with their bulk and efficiency. I've got her, the female tech said, gently nudging me aside. Her partner was already assessing Marjorie, slipping an oxygen mask over her face. barking readings into his radio. I stood there, useless, arms wrapped around myself, watching them work. They moved her onto a gurney with practiced ease. "You the one who found her?" The female tech asked me, her eyes scanning the room, landing on the still hissing heater. "Yes." I broke the door down. "The gas smell." "You did good. Getting the window open. Calling it in fast. Might have saved her life." She gave my arm a brief, firm squeeze. "We're taking her to Mount Sinai. You can follow." I nodded, numb, as they maneuvered the gurney out. I grabbed my purse and a coat. My phone buzzed. A text from Eric. "Eric, in a marathon client session. Can't talk. Everything okay?" The casualness of it, the sheer, infuriating normalcy, struck a spark in the cold panic. I typed back, my fingers stabbing the screen. "Me. No, it's not. Your mother collapsed. Carbon monoxide poisoning in her bathroom. Ambulance is taking her to Mount Sinai ER. I'm following." 3 dots appeared, bounced, disappeared. Then a call. I answered, my voice flat. "Eric. Kim. Jesus. What happened? Is she?" He sounded breathless, but there was an odd flatness underneath. "She's alive. Unconscious. The EMS thinks she'll be okay because I got to her fast." I couldn't keep the bitter edge out. "Where are you?" "I told you. Westchester. This deal is a nightmare. The clients are being impossible." His voice faded into static. Or maybe it was the blood rushing in my ears. "Look, I'll wrap this up as fast as I can and get there." "Which hospital?" "Mount Sinai. ER." Okay. I'll be there. Just handle things until I get there." "Okay. Babe, handle things." I repeated, the words like ashes in my mouth. "You're strong. Kim, you've got this. Gotta go." And he was gone. I stood in the wreckage of the bathroom, the door hanging from its broken hinges, the cold city air swirling the last of the poison away. Handle things. The spark he'd struck flared hotter. The ER was a controlled chaos of beeping machines and hurried voices. I filled out forms I could barely read, recited insurance information from memory, and answered the same questions from nurses. Then a doctor, Mrs. Davidson, a young doctor with tired eyes, approached me in the waiting area. "I'm Dr. Chen. Your mother-in-law is stable. We've got her on oxygen. Running tests. She's regained consciousness briefly, but she's confused and fatigued, which is normal. We'll need to keep her for at least 48 hours for observation. Make sure there's no delayed neurological impact." The relief was so profound my knees buckled. I sank into a plastic chair. "Thank you. Can I see her?" "Soon. She's resting now." He consulted his clipboard. "We'll need some documents when she's admitted to a room. Her insurance card, ID, and if you have it, any advance directive or medical power of attorney paperwork. It would be helpful." "Of course. They're at home. I'll go get them." "Take your time. She's in good hands." I called Eric again. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. The townhouse felt different when I returned. It was no longer just a home. It was a crime scene. Quiet and accusing. The broken bathroom door gaped like a wound. I avoided it, heading straight for the elegant, book-lined study that served as Marjorie's sanctuary. Her important documents were in a small, tasteful wall safe behind a landscape painting. Eric and I both knew the combination that our wedding date, a sentimental choice Marjorie had made when she added us after the marriage. 080717. I spun the dial. The safe door opened with a soft click. I reached for the familiar blue folder labeled medical/legal. As I pulled it out, something small and black, no bigger than a shirt button, tumbled from a crevice in the safe's interior and landed on the Persian rug with a nearly silent plink. I froze, the folder in one hand. I stared at the object. It wasn't a jewel, wasn't a part of the safe. It was sleek, modern, with a tiny, dark glass eye, a camera, a listening device. My blood which had just begun to thaw, turned to ice again. This wasn't forgotten. This was hidden. Very carefully. Without touching it, I set the folder down. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and zoomed in. I took several pictures of the device lying there. Then a wider shot showing its position in relation to the safe. The painting askew. My mind, which had been operating on emergency autopilot, shifted into a colder, sharper gear. I did not touch it. I did not remove it. Whoever put it there might know if it was disturbed. Leaving it exactly as it was, I retrieved the folder, closed the safe, and carefully repositioned the painting. My hands were steady now, but my thoughts were racing. A torrent of awful connections. The locked door, the faulty heater Eric had kept saying was fine, just vintage, his absence, his strange, detached phone calls, the missed calls, and now this, a device in a safe that held wills, trust documents, insurance policies, and Marjorie's current. Updated will that left the bulk of her considerable estate, a mix of trust funds, and this very townhouse, T.O. Eric and me, jointly, handle things. I looked down at the folder in my hands, the mundane paperwork for a hospital admission. Then I looked back at the painting, hiding its new secret. This wasn't an accident. The fall, the gas, there were parts of something. And the spider, I was suddenly certain, wasn't in Westchester. He was somewhere, listening, watching, waiting. But he'd made one mistake. He'd underestimated the woman he'd asked to handle things. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first full one since I'd heard that terrible thud. The fear was still there, a live wire in my gut, but it was now joined by something else, something hard and clear and fierce. A plan began to form, not with words, but with a single, unwavering directive. Find the truth. Get proof. I slipped the phone with the pictures deep into my pocket, gathered the medical documents, and walked out of the study. The house was silent, but it was a different silence now. It was the quiet before the hunt. The cold, antiseptic air of the hospital corridor did nothing to clear the static roaring in my head. The pictures on my phone felt like a live coal in my pocket, burning a hole through the fabric of my reality. Handle things, did Eric's words now tasted like a poison. I had handled the 911 call, the EMS, the ER paperwork. Now, I had to handle this. Marjorie was asleep when I returned, pale against the white sheets, an oxygen cannula taped under her nose. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound. I placed the folder of documents on the bedside table and stood there, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. A fierce, protective fury ignited within me, hotter and purer than the earlier panic. This woman, who had welcomed me with open arms when my own family was a continent away, who remembered my favorite flowers and laughed at my terrible puns, had been reduced to this fragile shell by what? Negligence, or something far darker. The device in the safe pointed to the latter. I needed to move. Thinking was dangerous here, surrounded by the ghost of what almost happened. I needed data. I needed to see the beast in the light. I'll be back soon. Marjorie, I whispered, touching her cool hand. I promise. The townhouse was a silent tomb. I stood in the grand foyer, my coat still on, and listened, just the old pipes groaning. He's not here. That of course he wasn't. He was handling his crisis in Westchester, or so he said. My eyes traveled to the door of his home office, down the hall from the study. It was usually locked. Eric prized a sanctuary, a place for confidential client work. I'd never minded. Everyone needed space. Now, the locked door felt like a challenge. I walked over, heart hammering against my ribs. I reached for the polished brass knob. It turned, unlocked. My breath hitched. In his rushed, performative exit this morning, had he forgotten? Or had he felt so secure, so convinced of his narrative, that he hadn't bothered? I slipped inside, closing the door softly behind me. The room smelled of him, sandalwood cologne, expensive paper, and a hint of single malt scotch. It was meticulously organized, a stage set for a powerful man. Floor to ceiling shelves, a massive walnut desk, a sleek laptop sitting closed in the center like a black monolith. He'll have it password protected, of course. But Eric was a creature of habit, and his habits were rooted in a profound, unshakable narcissism. His passwords were always variations on a theme. His achievements, graduation year, the date he made VP, our wedding anniversary. I opened the laptop. The screen blinked to life, demanding a password. I tried our anniversary, the one he used for our joint streaming accounts. 080717. Incorrect. I tried the date he'd founded his consultancy. 110,115. Incorrect. Frustration bubbled up. I was running out of time. He could call. He could come back. Think. Kimberly. What does he value? What does he think defines him? My gaze fell on a framed photo on his desk. Not of us. Of him and Marjorie. Taken at his graduation from Wharton. He was beaming, his arm around her shoulders. She looked up at him with pure, unadulterated pride. It was the look he craved above all others, the validation of the one person who had always believed in him, who had financed that degree, who had built the foundation of his success. A cold clarity settled over me. His mother wasn't just a person to him. She was the source, the architect, the audience. Her approval was his oxygen. And if he was planning to sever that connection, wouldn't he memorialize it? Even in something as vile as a password, with fingers that felt numb. I typed in Marjorie's birthday, 092151. The screen unlocked. The desktop wallpaper was a generic stock photo of a mountain peak. I almost laughed at the banality. My eyes scanned the icons. Financial models, client presentations, tax documents. Then I saw it, tucked between a folder named Q4 Reports and Property Taxes. A folder with an innocuous, chilling label. Mother's Plan, Phase 3. Phase 3! There had been phases before. This was ongoing, methodical. For a moment, I just stared. This was the threshold. Once I opened this, my marriage, my life as I knew it, was over. There would be no unknowing it. I pulled out my phone again. This time, I opened the video recorder. I held it up, capturing the screen. My hand in the frame, pointing at the folder. It's Saturday, February 27th, 2026. I said, my voice low but steady in the quiet room. I am in my husband Eric Davidson's home office. The door was unlocked. I accessed his laptop using the password 092151, which is his mother Marjorie Davidson's birthday. I am about to open a folder labeled Mother's Plan, Phase 3. I am doing this because I believe my mother-in-law's life is in danger, and I have already discovered a concealed electronic device in her personal safe. I tapped the folder. It asked for another password. Think, what's the next layer? If her birthday was the key to his world, what was the key to this specific darkness? A date. It always came back to a date. Then it hit me. The last time Marjorie was truly, publicly proud of him. When his face was in the Wall Street Journal for landing the Van Horn account. He'd had the article framed. The publication date. I found it in my mind's eye. March 15th, 2024. 031524. I typed it in. The folder opened. A torrent of files spilled onto the screen. My video kept rolling as I scrolled, my stomach twisting into a knot of pure horror. Document 1. Revised underscore will underscore draft underscore 3.pdf. I open it. It was a new last will and testament for Marjorie Elaine Davidson. The executrix was a lawyer I didn't recognize. The beneficiary section was a masterpiece of malice. It left the entire trust fund, the proceeds from the sale of the townhouse, and all liquid assets to my beloved son, Eric James Davidson, solely and separately as his own property. My name appeared in a single, contemptuous clause. I leave to my daughter-in-law, Kimberly N. Davidson, the sum of $50,000 in recognition of her companionship. 50,000 at a slap in the face. A pittance designed to look like generosity while disinheriting me for millions. The signature line was blank, but the document was dated just 2 weeks ago. Document 2. Medical _assessment outline. Docs. It was a bullet point list. Dr. Armitage to confirm early stage dementia signs. Use episodes of confusion reference. Thanksgiving 2025. Misplaced keys January 2026. Stress need for conservatorship. Suggest Kimberly's influence may be exacerbating condition. They were going to have her declared incompetent. To take control. Document 3. A series of email exchanges with a name. Roland Finch. Private investigations. The preview pane showed snippets. Surveillance on Kimberly confirm routine. No signs of infidelity yet, but we can manufacture. And the Dursoy-Cheat inspection report is attached. The valve is faulty. A failure would be consistent with age and lack of maintenance. Recommend letting it run its course. Untraceable. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk. Letting it run its course. Why mind flashed to the hissing heater. The metallic smell. Marjorie on the tiles. It wasn't an accident. It was phase 2, or maybe phase 1, and they had a plan for me. 2. Manufacture infidelity. Discredit me. Isolate her. The final file was a simple text document named Narrative. I opened it. It read like a press release or a story to tell friends. After the tragic, accidental passing of Marjorie due to a household malfunction, which deeply affected Kimberly's mental state. It became clear she was struggling. Her erratic behavior, see attached PI reports, and emotional instability made it impossible for our marriage to continue. While I grieve my mother, I must also protect myself from Kimberly's unreasonable demands and false accusations during the divorce proceedings. Her attempt to contest Mom's clear, updated will is a painful example of her avarice during this difficult time. He had written the story of my villainy. He had cast himself as the grieving, victimized son and husband. He had planned to gaslight the world after he had almost gassed his mother to death. A sound escaped me. A choked gasp that was half sob, half growl. The fury was all-consuming now. A white-hot forge that burned away every last shred of doubt, every residual filament of love. This was premeditated, cold, and monstrous. My hands flew over the trackpad. I opened my cloud storage. I created a new, encrypted folder, evidence. I began uploading every document. I screenshotted the emails. I saved the narrative. I made sure the video was still running, panning over the damning file names. I then opened a secure messaging app and tapped my oldest friend, Savannah Reed, in San Francisco. Me, Savannah. Red alert. Do not reply to this message. I am sending you a data dump. Save it. Do not open it unless you cannot reach me for 48 hours or hear from me that something bad has happened. This is life and death. Trust no one, especially not Eric. I attached the encrypted archive and hit send. A moment later, a single thumbs up emoji appeared. Savannah, ever the pragmatic lawyer, knew the drill. I was about to close everything when a new email notification popped up on Eric's screen. The sender was Roland Finch. The subject line, update on subject K. I couldn't stop myself. I clicked. Eric. Subject K was at the hospital most of the afternoon. Returned to the residence at 4:17 p.m. No unusual contacts. However, our audio feed from the study safe was interrupted at 3:05 p.m. for approximately 90 seconds. Could be a technical glitch. Do you want me to send a guy to check the device? Might be a dead battery. Risky while she's in the house. Advise. The audio feed. So it was a listening device. and it had gone offline when I'd opened the safe. They knew, or they suspected. Risky while she's in the house. My blood ran cold. I looked over my shoulder at the closed office door. The silence of the house was no longer just quiet, it was predatory. He wasn't just planning, he was actively watching. And now his watchman had blinked. I had to get out. Now. I closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. I wiped the trackpad with the edge of my sleeve out of a primal. Perhaps useless. Instinct. I backed out of the office, closed the door, and stood in the hallway, my back against the wall, breathing hard. My phone rang, sharp and terrifying in the silence. The screen flashed. Eric. I counted to 3, forcing my breathing to slow. I had to sound normal. I had to be the Kimberly he expected. Worried, a little scattered, handling things. I swiped to answer. Eric? I let a tremor enter my voice. Kim, I'm just leaving Westchester. Traffic's a bitch. How's Mom? His voice was all concern now. The perfect, attentive son, stable, sleeping. The doctor says she'll be okay, but needs observation. I paused, injecting the right amount of shaky exhaustion. Eric, it was so scary. The house, it doesn't feel safe. That heater. I know. Baby. I've been thinking about that. It's my fault. I kept putting off replacing the damn thing. I feel terrible. The performance was masterful. The regret in his tone was almost believable. Look, I'll get a contractor out first thing Monday. We'll rip the whole thing out. Monday? I echoed, letting a hint of panic seep in. What about tonight? What if? The gas is off, right? The EMS turned it off. It's safe. Kim, just cold. He was soothing me, managing me. Listen, when I get to the hospital, we'll talk about all this. Maybe it's a sign. Mom shouldn't be living alone in that big house with old systems. We should look into options. Options like a conservatorship, like a comfortable facility where she could be medicated and forgotten. You mean like assisted living? I whispered, playing my part. Maybe. Or we could even look. It's too much to get into now. Let's just focus on Mom getting better. I'll be there in an hour. You're a rock. Kim, I don't know what I'd do without you. The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. Okay, I mumbled. See you soon. I hung up and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, hugging my knees. The shock was receding, replaced by a glacial, calculating calm. He was coming. He would perform the role of the distraught son at the hospital. He would try to steer the conversation about Marjorie's future, and all the while, he would be wondering if the glitch in the audio feed meant anything. I couldn't face him yet, not with all this knowledge screaming behind my eyes. I needed armor. I needed a plan that was more than just gathering evidence. Pushing myself up, I went to our bedroom, the bedroom, a space that now felt like a stranger's. I packed an overnight bag with deliberate, unemotional movements. Jeans, sweaters, toiletries. I took the folder of Marjorie's documents. My phone buzzed again. A text from the hospital number. Mount Sinai. Mrs. Davidson is awake and asking for you. A different kind of urgency seized me. I had to see her. Before Eric did. When I entered her room, the lights were dim. Marjorie was propped up slightly, her eyes open. They were clouded with confusion and drug-induced haze, but they cleared a fraction when she saw me. Kimberly, she rasped. I'm here. Marjorie. I took her hand, careful of the 4-line. Her skin was papery and cool. She blinked slowly, trying to focus. The bathroom, it was so hot. I know. It was the heater. It's okay now. You're safe. She nodded weakly, but her brow furrowed as if grappling with a difficult thought. Her grip on my hand tightened, just a little. She looked past me, towards the door, then back into my eyes. The fog seemed to part for a moment, revealing a sharp, desperate clarity. Kimberly, she whispered, pulling me closer with a surprising strength. Her voice was a dry leaf, but the words were unmistakable. Be careful of Eric. A tear escaped from the corner of her eye, tracing a path through the wrinkles on her temple. My boy, he's changed. The money, it made him cold. He asks me about the trust, the house all the time. She was trembling now, the effort exhausting her. I didn't want to see. I squeezed her hand, my heart breaking and hardening simultaneously. I see it now. Marjorie. I see him. Her eyes searched mine, looking for truth, for an ally. She found it. A shuddering sigh escaped her, and she sank back into the pillows, the brief lucidity fading. You're a good girl, she murmured, her eyes closing. My good girl. I sat there, holding the hand of the woman my husband had tried to kill, as her breathing evened out into sleep. Her warning, born of a mother's slow, painful disillusionment, was the final confirmation. The last piece of the terrible puzzle clicked into place. At that moment, the door to the room swung open. Eric stood there, silhouetted against the bright hallway lights. He had changed into fresh, casual clothes, dark jeans, a cashmere sweater, the picture of understated wealth and concern. His expression was a perfect mask of grief and worry as his eyes went from me to his sleeping mother. My God, he breathed, the mask flawless. He walked to the other side of the bed, reaching for Marjorie's other hand. He didn't look at me. His full performance was for the unconscious audience. Mom, he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. I'm so sorry. As he bent over her, a faint, unfamiliar scent reached me. Not his sandalwood, something lighter, floral, perfume. It clung to the collar of his sweater. He finally lifted his gaze to meet mine. His eyes were the perfect shade of devastated blue. Are you okay, Kim? He asked, the caring husband. I looked at him. A.T. the man who had typed letting it run its course, who had budgeted $50,000 for my future, who had a private investigator trying to fabricate my adultery while he carried another woman's scent on his clothes. The woman who had broken down a door and saved a life was gone. The woman who sat here now was someone else. Forged in the last few hours, I gave him a small, weary smile, the kind a drained, trusting wife would give. I'm just glad you're here now, I said, my voice soft, compliant, and utterly, completely false. The real work began now, the performance, the war, and I was ready. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in high-functioning dissimulation. I moved through the world as Kimberly Davidson, worried wife and dutiful daughter-in-law, while inside, a cold, precise engine named Kim hummed, processing data, assessing threats, and plotting moves. The duality was exhausting, but it was also my armor. I stayed at the hospital that first night, in the uncomfortable recliner next to Marjorie's bed. Eric pretended to do the same, but his presence was a performance. He'd pace, check his phone with a worried frown that didn't reach his eyes, and make hushed, important-sounding calls in the hallway about delegating the Westchester situation. He was building his alibi of the concerned, overburdened son-husband executive. I watched him, noting the tells I'd once found charming to the way he'd run a hand through his hair when lying, the slight over-enunciation when pretending empathy. Now, there were data points in my dossier. You should go home, get some real sleep, he said to me around midnight, placing a hand on my shoulder. His touch made my skin crawl. I'll stay. I'm okay, I said, not looking up from the novel I was pretending to read. I'd rather be here if she wakes up confused. Suit yourself. He sounded almost relieved. He kissed the top of my head dry, perfunctory gesture and left. The scent of that unknown perfume trailing faintly in his wake. He didn't go home. I knew because I had a $29.99 GPS tracker tucked into the inner lining of his briefcase, ordered online and delivered to a UPS store box under a pseudonym Savannah had helped me set up years ago for a surprise party. Child's play, but effective. The app on my phone showed his car moving downtown, towards the village, not Westchester. I saved the location history. The next morning, I was bleary-eyed but clear-headed. Marjorie was more lucid, able to take some broth. When the nurse left us, I pulled my chair close. Marjorie, I said, my voice low but firm, we need to talk. About everything. Her eyes, the same blue as Eric's, but softened by decades of kindness and now a film of pain, filled with fresh tears. He wouldn't. Not really. He's my boy. The denial was a mother's last refuge. I didn't show her the files. That would be cruel. Instead, I took her hand, the heater in your bathroom. The one Eric said he'd get replaced for 2 years. The inspector's report called the valve critically faulty. I leaned closer, and I found something in your safe. A little electronic device. It wasn't for your protection. Marjorie, her face crumpled. The last vestige of hope bled out of it, leaving behind a landscape of pure grief. Oh, Kim. The words were a sigh of surrender. What has he become? I don't know. I said, truthfully, but I know what he's trying to do, and I'm not going to let him. I need your help to stop him. What can I do? She whispered, her voice frail, but her gaze sharpening. The fighter I knew, the one who'd built a charity from the ground up after her husband died, that was stirring. When you're stronger, we'll need to talk to lawyers. Your lawyers, not the one on the will I found. And we'll need to make sure your wishes are crystal clear, in a way that can't be challenged. I paused. And for now, we need to pretend. With him, you're confused, tired, scared. You lean on me. You don't talk about wills, or the house, or the trust. You just want to get better. Can you do that? She looked at me for a long moment, then gave a single, resolute nod. The alliance was sealed, not in blood, but in shared betrayal. For you, Kimberly, and for me, that man in my house, that's not my son. When Eric arrived later, bearing overpriced fruit and a bouquet, the performance began. Marjorie played her part perfectly. She was vague, weary, drifting in and out of focus. When Eric tried to steer the conversation, Mom, we really need to think about making things easier for you. Maybe a nice place with staff. She'd just pat his hand and murmur, Not now, Eric. I'm so tired. Kimberly handles things. I saw the flicker of irritation in his eyes, quickly masked. He didn't like me being positioned as the capable one. It messed with his narrative. Later, in the cafeteria over terrible coffee, he tried a different tack with me. This has been a wake-up call. Kim, a real scare. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. I let him. I've been thinking about us. About Mom. The stress, it's a lot. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist. I can get a recommendation from Dr. Armitage. He's a top geriatric psych. Knows all about caregiver burnout. Dr. Armitage, the name from the medical assessment file. The cold in my veins turned to ice. He was already laying the groundwork to pathologize me. Caregiver burnout. Erratic behavior. I withdrew my hand gently, under the pretense of adding a sugar packet. Maybe you're right, I said, feigning thoughtful consideration. It has been overwhelming, especially finding her like that and then dealing with all the insurance. The house. I let my voice trail off, injecting a note of helplessness. I just feel so out of my depth with all this legal and medical stuff. His expression softened with patronizing concern. See, that's exactly what I mean. You're taking too much on. Let me handle some of it. The insurance. The house assessments. No, I said, a little too quickly. I forced a weak smile. I mean, it gives me something to focus on. But maybe talking to a professional about the emotional side wouldn't be a bad idea. Not Dr. Armitage. Though, someone independent. Maybe a lawyer? Just to understand our options. For Mom's care. The estate, so we're not making decisions in a panic. I looked at him, wide-eyed. Would that be okay? Just for a consultation? I was dangling the bait. Lawyer, but framed as a naive, overwhelmed wife seeking guidance for her mother-in-law's well-being. Not as a litigant. He studied me, and I held my breath, letting the mask of exhausted vulnerability stay perfectly in place. After a moment, he nodded slowly, a calculated decision playing out behind his eyes. A lawyer I chose, especially one I approached in this state, could be steered, or at least monitored. It was less risky than me spiraling unpredictably, or, worse, stumbling onto his lawyer. That's actually a very responsible idea. Honey, he said, his smile oozing manufactured pride. Smart. We should be proactive. You find someone good. I'll cover the cost. Of course. Just keep me in the loop. Okay. We're a team. We're a team. The words were a mockery. Of course, I whispered, looking down at my coffee. The subservience tasted like bile, but it was fuel. That afternoon, from a payphone in the hospital lobby, a relic, but untraceable, I made the call. I didn't call just any lawyer. I called the one Savannah, my San Francisco litigator friend, had whispered about in a frantic, encrypted call after receiving my data dump. If you're going to war, she'd said, you need a general, not a soldier. You need Jack Thornton. Jack Thornton's offices took up the top floor of a steel and glass tower on Park Avenue. The reception area was a study in intimidating minimalism. A severe-looking assistant led me to a conference room with a view that dwarfed the city. Thornton entered not a moment later. He was in his late 50s, with the lean, relentless build of a marathon runner and eyes the color of glacial ice. He didn't offer a comforting smile or a platitude. He shook my hand, his grip firm and brief, and got straight to business. Mrs. Davidson, Savannah Reed speaks highly of you. She also sent me a heavily encrypted file that made for compelling reading. He gestured for me to sit, taking the seat at the head of the table. Tell me why you're here. In your own words. For the next hour, I laid it out, calmly, chronologically, without hysterics. The fall, the device, the files on Eric's laptop, the mother's plan, the private investigator, the staged narrative. I showed him the photos, the video of me opening the folder. I played the audio recording from my phone of Eric in the cafeteria, suggesting Dr. Armitage. Thornton listened, steepling his fingers. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was silent for a full minute, his gaze fixed on the skyline. He's arrogant, Thornton finally said, his voice a low, cool rumble. And arrogant men make mistakes, burying the murder plot in a folder named Mother's Plan on his personal laptop. Protected by his mother's birthday? That's not just arrogant. It's borderline pathological. He thinks he's the smartest person in every room. He turned his icy eyes back to me. You, however, have been remarkably clear-headed. The video of the file access is good. It establishes provenance. The audio device in the safe is concerning. It means you're under active surveillance. What do I do? The question was simple. Stark. 3 things. First, financial triage. I have a forensic accountant who can become a ghost. We'll map every asset, every account, every shell company he might have. We assume he's already moving money. We freeze what we can, trace what we can't. Okay. Second, we lock down your mother-in-law. The moment her doctor clears her, we get a new, ironclad will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. The works, drafted by me, executed in front of witnesses and a video camera. We get a psychiatric evaluation confirming her soundness of mind, done by someone IQUS. We make her wishes unassailable. I nodded, relief beginning to seep through the cracks in my armor. Direction, a plan. Third, he leaned forward slightly. We feed the beast. What? Your husband has a narrative. The grieving son, the betrayed husband, the responsible one. We let him believe it's working. You will be the slightly unhinged, financially naive, emotionally overwhelmed wife. You will give him reasons to underestimate you. You will, perhaps, present a vulnerability he thinks he can exploit. A dark understanding dawned on me. You want me to bait him. I want you to control the narrative from the inside. He's watching you? Good. Let him see what we want him to see. You're worried about money? Let that slip. You're feeling isolated? Hint at it. We create a pressure point, and when he pushes on it, we'll be recording. He slid a small, unmarked box across the table. Burner phone. Use it for all communication with me and Savannah. Assume your personal phone, your car, your home, especially your home, are compromised. These. He opened the box to reveal two tiny, disc-like devices and a slim USB drive. Our audio or video sensors. They're motion activated. With remote upload. The USB is a keystroke logger. If you can get it into his primary computer, even for 5 minutes, it will give us everything. The reality of it, the spycraft of it, that hit me. This wasn't just hiring a lawyer. This was declaring covert war. And what's the end game? I asked, my voice steady. The end game, Thornton said, a predator's smile, touching his lips for the first time, is total, unequivocal surrender. We use his plan against him. We let him dig his own grave, and then we present him with the shovel. Criminal charges for attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, civil forfeiture of his assets, a divorce that leaves him not just penniless, but in prison. He paused. It will get ugly. He will retaliate. You need to be prepared for that. I thought of Marjorie, pale against the hospital sheets. I thought of the phrase, letting it run its course. I met Thornton's gaze. I'm prepared. That evening, I returned home. The townhouse felt like a museum of a life that had never really existed. I moved through it, a ghost in my own life. In the living room, beneath the ledge of a bookshelf facing Eric's favorite armchair, I placed one of the sensors. In the kitchen, near the island where we had morning coffee, I placed the other. The USB logger was trickier. His laptop went with him to the office, but he had a desktop in his study, a powerful machine for gaming and, I now knew, plotting. I waited until deep into the night. Eric was at the hospital, playing the dutiful son for the evening shift. I put on gloves, entered the study, and slid the USB into a port on the back of the tower. A small light on it glowed green. I counted to 60, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, then pulled it out. Thornton's tech had assured me 60 seconds was enough. The device would now passively transmit every keystroke from that computer to a secure server. I was back in the kitchen, making tea I wouldn't drink. When Eric returned, he looked tired, but it was the tiredness of a performer after a long show. How is she? I asked, wrapping my hands around the mug. Asleep, resting. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, not offering me any. We need to talk. Kim. Okay. I kept my voice small. This thing with the lawyer. I've been thinking. He swirled the amber liquid, not looking at me. Maybe it's a sign. Not just about Mom. About us. Here it comes. I thought. The first probe. We've been under a lot of strain. This situation with Mom. My work. We've drifted apart. He finally looked at me, his eyes performing sincere pain. I feel it. I miss us. It was breathtaking. The audacity. The man who had files titled Mother's Plan was now trying to sell me marital ennui. I let my eyes well up, looking down into my tea. I miss us, too. I mumbled. The perfect, sad wife. Maybe he moved closer, his voice dropping to an intimate murmur. The scent of scotch and that lingering, foreign perfume washed over me. Maybe we need to think about a fresh start. For us, once Mom is settled somewhere, safe. This house, it's full of memories, but it's also a burden. The upkeep, the memories of what happened to Mom here. He was testing the waters, feeling out my attachment to the house, Marjorie's house, which was supposed to be part of his payout. I shrugged, a gesture of defeat. I just want what's best for everyone. It's all so expensive. The hospital bills, even with insurance and the new will she talked about a while ago. The lawyer fees. I let the sentence hang. a picture of financial anxiety, a flash of something that triumph. Crossed his face before it was smoothed over with concern. Don't worry about money. Kim, that's my job. I'll take care of everything. He put a hand on my arm. You just focus on getting better, on feeling like yourself again. He'd taken the bait. He saw a fragile, money-worried woman, ripe for manipulation. He saw exactly what I wanted him to see. Later, in the sterile silence of our separate bedrooms, another recent development he'd blamed on stress. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the city. The fear was still there, a constant, low hum, but it was joined now by something else. A focused, diamond-hard clarity. I was no longer just reacting. I was building a case, brick by invisible brick. I was weaving a web, and Eric, in his supreme arrogance, was walking right into the center of it. The calm was an illusion. The storm was coming, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the thunder. I was learning to harness the lightning. The performance entered its second week, and I was becoming a virtuoso. Every flutter of anxiety, every hesitant question, every weary sigh was a carefully placed brushstroke on the canvas of Eric's perception. I was painting the portrait of a woman buckling under pressure, a woman whose greatest concern was her own crumbling stability, not the machinations of her husband. It was exhausting, living inside the lie, but the cold, watchful part of me, Kim, thrived on it. Marjorie was moved to a private rehabilitation facility, a serene, expensive place in Connecticut recommended by Thornton. Isolation is our friend right now, he'd said over the secure burner phone. Controlled environment, no surprise visitors. Eric had initially balked at the cost and the distance, pushing for a facility in the city for convenience. But Jack, the lawyer, Thornton, he said this place in Greenwich is the best for post-CO poisoning recovery. I'd said, wringing my hands in a gesture of helpless concern I'd been practicing in the mirror. They have a specialized neurology wing. I need to know we're doing the absolute best for her. Eric, after what happened, I couldn't live with myself if we cut corners. I'd let my voice break, just a little. Maybe I'm being irrational. You always handle the finances better. The appeal to his ego and the presentation of my decision as fragile, emotional, and deferential to his ultimate financial authority worked perfectly. He'd sighed, the put-upon patriarch. If it means that much to you, and if this lawyer really thinks it's necessary, fine. But, Kim, we need to be realistic about the long term. This level of care is unsustainable. Unsustainable, the word hung in the air, a threat and a promise. I just nodded, looking suitably chastened and grateful. Visits to Marjorie became my sanctuary, away from the surveillance-laden townhouse. In her sunny room overlooking gardens, we could drop the act. Our conversations were quiet, strategic, and healing. He brought flowers yesterday, she said one afternoon, her voice stronger, her color returning. She was doing physical therapy, rebuilding her strength. Orchids. I hate orchids. They look like insects. A spark of her old spirit glinted in her eyes. I smiled. A real one. He's checking your cognitive function, seeing if you're with it, enough to sign anew while leaving everything to his pet iguana. Her smile faded. He tried again, talking about simplifying my affairs, how probate is a nightmare for grieving families. She reached for my hand. I told him I was too tired to think about death, that my smart daughter-in-law was handling all that with the nice Mr. Thornton. She squeezed my fingers. He didn't like that. Good, I said. Let him not like it. Thornton's team is drafting the new documents. The psychiatrist who recommended is coming tomorrow. She'll certify you're sharper than both of us put together. Marjorie looked out the window, her profile etched with a profound sadness. I keep thinking about the little boy who used to cry when he skinned his knees. Where did he go? Kim? I had no answer for that. The man in the townhouse was a stranger to us both. Back in the city, The stage was set for the next act. Thornton's plan was simple in concept, delicate in execution. Present a vulnerability so tempting Eric would be compelled to act upon it, and record him doing so. He sees you as emotionally and financially fragile. Thornton had said during our last encrypted video call, his face pixelated slightly on the burner phone screen. We need to amplify that. Give him a specific financial pressure point, something that makes you look desperate, something that would logically push you to make a bad decision or appear unstable. And so, the fiction of the lost inheritance was born. It was a Tuesday evening. I knew from the keystroke logger data that which Thornton's text decrypted into a chilling diary of Eric's searches for untraceable sedatives and contestability of wills under undue influence, that Eric had a late client dinner. I waited until 8 p.m. Then I placed the call. I used the landline in the living room, knowing the motion-activated sensor was silently recording. I dialed Savannah's number, but I wasn't calling Savannah. I was calling an actress, a friend of Thornton's, who'd been briefed on the scenario. Her name was Lydia, and she was playing the part of my old college roommate, Sarah. I took a deep breath, summoning the persona, Kimberly on the edge. Sarah. Oh God. Sarah. I'm so glad you picked up. My voice was pitched high, trembling with manufactured panic. Kim? What's wrong? You sound terrible. Lydia's voice was perfect, concerned. Familiar. It's all gone wrong. Everything. I let a sob hitch in my throat. The investment, the one my parents left me. The one I never told Eric about, the hedge fund manager. He called today. It's a total loss. A complete write-down. What? Kim, that was over $200,000. That was your safety net. I know. I was pacing now. My footsteps, loud on the hardwood, playing to the unseen audience. I thought it was safe. It was supposed to be conservative, and now it's just gone. And with Marjorie's medical bills. And this new facility. Eric's been talking about tightening belts. And I can't tell him I lost my own money like an idiot. He'll think I'm a financial liability on top of everything else. You have to tell him. Kim, I can't. Don't you see? Everything is so tense already. He thinks I'm fragile. This would just prove it. He's already talking to some doctor about caregiver stress. Sarah, I see the way he looks at me sometimes. Like I'm a problem he needs to manage. I dropped my voice to a desperate whisper. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm alone in this big house, with all these bills and no money of my own. And my mother-in-law almost died. And my husband is... I trailed off, letting the implication of instability hang in the air. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. What can I do? Nothing. Just don't tell anyone. Okay. Especially not Eric. Promise me. I just needed to tell someone before I screamed. We spoke for a few more minutes, with me layering in more details about the fictitious fund, the greedy manager, and my own spiraling sense of worthlessness. I hung up, slumping onto the sofa, my body trembling with the adrenaline of the performance. I waited in the silent, watched room. 20 minutes later, my personal phone buzzed. A text from Eric. Eric, dinner running late. These guys are impossible. Everything okay at home? It was a probe. He'd heard enough. He was checking my state. Me. It's fine. Quiet. Just tired. Don't worry about me. I made sure the punctuation was slightly off. The tone flat. The message of a depleted woman. The trap was baited. 2 nights later, the payoff came. Eric announced he was catching up on work in his study and would be late to bed. I went through my routine. A shower. Pajamas. A cup of tea in the kitchen. At 11 p.m., I pretended to go to bed. Instead, I slipped into the small, rarely used guest room that shared a wall with his study. Thornton's techs had done more than give me sensors. They'd provided a parabolic microphone, a device that looked like a large satellite dish, for directed audio capture in critical situations. This was critical. I pressed the microphone against the wall. At first, There was only the faint click of keyboard keys. Then, his voice, low but clear. On a call? No, I'm sure. She was practically hysterical, talking to her friend about it. A pause. He was listening. 200 grand. Poof. All the money her dead parents left her. A low, ugly chuckle. She's always been naive about money. Thinks it's vulgar to talk about. Perfect. My blood ran cold. He'd taken the bait. He was reporting to someone. Another pause. The timing couldn't be better. With Mom's new will being drawn up by that shark, Thornton, we need to move faster. Kimberly being broke and unstable plays right into it. Financial pressure. Emotional distress. It's the perfect cocktail for making bad decisions. Or for being seen as incapable. I recognized the voice on the other end of the line now. It was female, slightly nasal. Celia. I'd met her once at a company holiday party. Celia Frommer, from Strategic Partnerships. She'd hung on Eric's every word. The medication route is still the cleanest. Eric continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. I strained to hear. Armitage can prescribe something for the anxiety he's going to diagnose her with. We adjust the dosage, a little confusion. A few falls, combined with the financial mess she's hidden from me. It undermines her credibility completely. No one will believe a word she says about the heater, about anything. Medication. Adjust the dosage. The cold calculation of it stole my breath. He wasn't just after money. He was planning to chemically dismantle me. Celia's voice was a tinny buzz through the wall. I caught words. Trust quicker, leverage. The trust is the key. Eric said, agreeing. Once Mom's declared incompetent and I have power of attorney, we can start moving assets. The house is equity, but the trust is liquid. With that and the life insurance. Life insurance, anew. Icy dagger. On whom? Marjorie? On me? Patience. Baby. He soothed. An endearment made me nauseous. We're almost there. She's setting the stage for us. Just keep pushing, Armitage. The psych eval needs to happen soon. Before she gets her feet under her with this new lawyer. They talked for a few more minutes. Their conversation descending into mundane, disgusting intimacy. Planning their future on the ashes of mine and Marjorie's. I recorded every word. The parabolic mic capturing it all with terrifying clarity. When the call ended, I remained frozen against the wall, the microphone heavy in my hands. The fury was a white noise in my head. This was no longer about theft or disinheritance. This was about eradication. I waited until I heard the click of his study door, his footsteps retreating down the hall towards his bedroom. I waited another 30 minutes in the dark, letting the silence solidify my resolve. Then, I moved. I had to get the recording to Thornton. I padded silently to the kitchen, retrieved the burner phone from its hiding place inside a hollowed-out cookbook, and plugged in the Mix SD card to send the files through the encrypted app. As I was waiting for the upload bar to crawl to 100%, a sound made my heart stop. The soft snick of a key in the front door lock. It was 1:15 a.m. Eric was in bed. I'd heard him. The front door opened, and quiet footsteps entered the foyer. Too light to be Eric's. A woman's heels. Celia. My mind raced. Had they planned a rendezvous? Was he not in bed? I'd misheard. No, the footsteps from the study had been definitive. Maybe she was letting herself in for a surprise. A sickening thought. I had seconds. The burner phone. The mic, they were on the kitchen island. In plain view if she came this way. I snatched them up. My hands slick with panic. The upload was at 98%. I couldn't disconnect. The footsteps moved towards the living room. Then I heard Eric's voice. Hushed but sharp. From the top of the stairs. Celia, what the hell are you doing here? I said we shouldn't meet here. I was in the neighborhood. Her voice floated up. Petulant. I wanted to see you. You've been so distant since the old bitch went to the hospital. Are you insane? Kimberly is here. So, she's probably zonked out on sleeping pills. You said she's a mess. I was trapped in the kitchen. The glow from the burner phone's screen like a beacon. The upload, 99%. I did the only thing I could think of. I dropped to the floor behind the large kitchen island, pulling my knees to my chest. The marble countertop hid me from view of the doorway. You need to leave. Now. Eric's voice was closer. He was coming downstairs. Fine, but we need to talk about the timeline. I'm not waiting forever. Eric, you promised me a life, and you'll have it once the money is moved and Kimberly is handled. Now go. Use the back alley. I heard a muffled protest, then the click of the front door closing. Eric's heavy sigh filled the silence. His footsteps approached the kitchen. My blood turned to ice. The upload bar on the phone finally, blessedly, hit 100%. I swiped the app closed. The screen going dark just as Eric's silhouette filled the kitchen doorway. He flicked on the light. I blinked up at him from my spot on the floor. The burner phone and mic clutched to my chest, hidden by my knees. Kim? He stared, his face a mask of surprise and instant suspicion. What are you doing on the floor? My mind, for a split second, went blank. Then, the actress saved me. I let my lip tremble, let my eyes go wide and glassy. I held up the burner phone, now just a dark, anonymous rectangle, .as if it were a lifeline. I dropped my phone. I whispered, my voice shaking. I was checking. I thought I heard something. A noise. Down here. I looked past him, towards the front door, injecting genuine fear into my expression. It wasn't hard. Was someone here? I heard voices. His suspicion wavered, replaced by a familiar, condescending irritation. He saw a paranoid, sleep-deprived wife cowering on the floor. It was the TV. Kim, I left it on in the study. You're hearing things. He walked over and offered a hand, not to help me up, but to take the phone. What's this? Since when do you have a cheap phone like this? I clutched it tighter, pulling it against my chest. It's a prepaid. Sarah, she said I should have one. For emergencies. So I don't have to use our plan if I need to call someone and not bother you. I let the tears well up. I'm so jumpy lately. Eric, this house, after what happened to Marjorie, it feels haunted. The lie, woven with threads of truth and my performance of fragility, worked. He relaxed, his hand dropping. The prepaid phone fit the narrative of the unstable, secretive woman he believed I was becoming. The parabolic mic still on the floor between my feet looked like a small, weird makeup mirror or compact in the dim light. You need to get a grip. Kim, he said, not unkindly, but with a firm finality. This isn't healthy. Talking to Sarah on secret phones, hearing noises. Dr. Armitage's evaluation can't come soon enough. Now come to bed. You're exhausted. He turned and walked out, leaving me on the floor. I waited until his footsteps faded upstairs. Then I slumped against the cabinet, a silent, shuddering wave of relief and terror washing over me. That had been too close. Celia, unexpected visit, had nearly blown everything, but had also given me something priceless. Her voice, in my home, confirming the conspiracy. Her impatience, their timeline. I looked down at the dark screen of the burner phone. The recording was safe. The trap had been sprung, and Eric had walked right into it, dragging his accomplice with him. The fear receded, burned away by a new, steely certainty. He thought I was breaking. He thought I was a problem to be medicated into submission. He had no idea the problem was just getting started. The week that followed the near disaster with Celia was a study in calibrated tension. Eric watched me with the focused, detached interest of a scientist observing a volatile specimen. I played my part to perfection, jumpy, forgetful, overly emotional at odd moments. And clinging to the prepaid phone like a security blanket, I made sure to have a few hushed, tearful conversations with Sarah in the garden. within earshot of the kitchen censor, lamenting my financial ruin and crippling anxiety. Thornton, on the other hand, was a monument of cold efficiency. The forensic accountants had completed their initial work, painting a damning picture of Eric's financial machinations, secret accounts in the Caymans, funneling small amounts from Marjorie's trust over the last 18 months, inquiries with a shady life settlement company about a policy on Marjorie's life. The keystroke logger had yielded a treasure trove. Drafts of emails to Dr. Armitage outlining concerns about my mental state, searches for the side effects of specific benzodiazepines, and a calendar entry for the following week simply titled, Armitage Eval K Finalize. The finalize was the trigger. Thornton's voice on the burner phone was grim. He's moving to the endgame. The evaluation is scheduled for next Thursday. We have to move first. We take the wind out of his sails completely. The plan was audacious. We wouldn't confront him at home, where he held the psychological advantage and the surveillance. We wouldn't do it in a neutral location. We would bring the war to his territory, to the gleaming glass and steel temple of his own success, the conference room of Davidson Strategic Consulting on Park Avenue. We'll use the element of surprise and the pressure of his professional environment. Thornton explained. He'll be off balance. The presence of his staff, the risk of exposure that IT will limit his options for melodrama or threats. He'll have to deal with the facts as presented. The day arrived, a crisp Tuesday morning. I dressed with deliberate care, a sharply tailored black pantsuit, minimalist pearl earrings, my hair in a severe but elegant chignon. I looked in the mirror and saw, not Kimberly, the fragile wife, but Kim, the plaintiff. The woman staring back was pale, her eyes holding a glacial fire. The fear was there, a familiar hum in the background, but it was now just another source of fuel. Thornton met me in the lobby of his building. With him was a man built like a refrigerator in a tailored suit, Marcus, my discreet, ever-present shadow for the day. We didn't speak. We took Thornton's Blacktown car the 10 blocks to Eric's office building. The receptionist at Davidson Consulting, a bright young thing named Chloe, blinked in surprise as we entered. Mrs. Davidson, Mr. Thornton. Eric isn't expecting. He is now, Thornton said, his voice leaving no room for argument. He handed her a plain, cream-colored envelope. Please give this to him. We'll wait in the main conference room. Now, please. The authority in his tone brooked no dissent. Chloe scurried off. Marcus held the door to the spacious, sunlit conference room with its breathtaking view of the park. Thornton and I took seats at one end of the long mahogany table. I placed my leather portfolio on the table. It contained nothing but a legal pad and a pen. The real weapons were in Thornton's briefcase and on the cloud server. The wait was perhaps 3 minutes. It felt like an eternity. My palms were damp. I kept my back straight, my gaze fixed on the door. It flew open. Eric stood there, his face a mask of confused irritation. He was in his shirt sleeves, tie slightly loosened. The picture of the busy executive interrupted. The envelope from Thornton, unopened, was in his hand. Kim? Jack, he said, using Thornton's first name in a forced, familiar tone. What's going on? I'm in the middle of a client call. His eyes darted between us, the confusion slowly giving way to a dawning, cold suspicion as he took in my appearance, Thornton's impassive face, Marcus's silent bulk by the door. Sit down, Eric, Thornton said, not a request. Eric's jaw tightened. He didn't like being ordered around in his own domain. I'd rather stand. Explain this. Thornton nodded almost imperceptibly. Marcus closed the conference room door and stood in front of it, his arms folded. The message was clear. No one was leaving until this was done. Very well, Thornton said, He opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick stack of papers. He slid them down the polished table. They spun to a stop directly in front of Eric. "What is this?" Eric asked, not touching them. "That," I said, my voice cutting through the room with a clarity that surprised even me, "is your plan in triplicate." He finally looked at me, really looked. The pretense of the concerned husband fell away, replaced by a sharp, evaluating glare. "Kim, what have you done? What nonsense has this lawyer been filling your head with?" He tried for a tone of pitying exasperation. "It's not in my head, Eric. It's on your laptop, in the folder called Mother's Plan Phase 3. Password, Mom's birthday, the revised will, the emails with Roland Finch, the private investigator you hired to follow me and manufacture evidence of infidelity, the inspection report on the water heater with the faulty valve you decided to let run its course." I recited the facts like a litany, each one a hammer blow. "Your notes for Dr. Armitage, your calendar entry for my evaluation to finalize my instability, your conversations with Celia Frommer about medicating me, moving trust assets, and life insurance policies." His face went through a terrifying transformation, from anger to shock, to a sickly pallor, and finally, to a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. The color drained from his face, then flooded back, mottling his neck. "You bitch," he hissed, the words barely audible. "You snooping, conniving little." "Careful, Mr. Davidson," Thornton interjected, his voice like a steel trap, snapping shut. "I'd advise you to read what's in front of you before you say another word that could be construed as a threat, which, incidentally, we are recording." He gestured to a small, discreet device on the table. Eric's eyes widened. He looked at the stack of papers as if they were a live snake. Slowly, with trembling hands, he picked up the top sheet. It was a printout of the revised _draft_3.pdf, with a clause leaving me $50,000 highlighted in yellow. Underneath were screenshots of his email to Roland Finch about the heater. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. He flipped through more. Financial records showing the Cayman transfers. The transcribed audio of his conversation with Celia from my parabolic, like a copy of the police report filed by Thornton regarding the suspicious carbon monoxide incident and the discovery of the listening device. "You have no proof any of this is real," he spat. But the bravado was hollow, crumbling. This is digital forgery. Character assassination. You're insane. And you've hired a shark to help you steal from me. That's the narrative you wrote, isn't it, Eric?" I said, leaning forward slightly. "The unstable, greedy wife narrative. But you forgot something. The evidence doesn't lie, and neither does your mother." That struck a nerve. His head snapped up. "You leave her out of this. You've poisoned her against me. You tried to kill her with carbon monoxide," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. "She's alive because of me, and she is of perfectly sound mind. She's already executed a new will, healthcare proxy, and power of attorney, all drafted by Mr. Thornton, all witnessed and videotaped, with an independent psychiatric evaluation confirming her competency. She has left everything to me, Eric, everything, and she has explicitly disinherited you." It was the killing blow. The last vestige of color drained from his face. He swayed on his feet, grabbing the back of a chair for support. The financial empire he'd plotted to steal was not only out of reach, it was now weaponized against him. "You can't," he stammered. "Oh, we can," Thornton said, taking over. He slid another, thinner set of papers across the table. "These are for you. A proposed separation agreement and a stipulation of settlement. The terms are non-negotiable. You will sign over your interest in the townhouse to Kimberly immediately. You will surrender 50% of the liquid assets in all joint accounts, as identified by our forensic accountant. You will renounce, in perpetuity, any and all claims to Marjorie Davidson's estate, including the trust. In return, Kimberly will not immediately file for divorce, and we will hold the criminal evidence in abeyance. Criminal? Eric whispered. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy, illegal surveillance. Thornton listed. The DA's office has a copy of our preliminary file. They're interested, especially in the part about the faulty heater and the let it run its course email, and the discussion of poisoning your wife. Eric's knees buckled. He sank into the chair, the papers spilling from his hands onto the table. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not anger, not contempt, but the raw, animal fear of a cornered thing. Kim, please, you have to listen to me. It wasn't like that. It was Celia. She pushed me. She put these ideas in my head. I was under so much pressure. I never meant for any of it to happen. Tears, real or expertly faked, welled in his eyes. I love you. I love Mom. I lost my way. Please, don't do this. We can get help. We can fix this. It was a breathtaking performance. The fallen prince begging for mercy. The man who had typed plans for my chemical submission was now weeping, reaching a trembling hand across the table towards me. I looked at his hand, then up at his tear-streaked face. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a vast, empty cold. Sign the papers, Eric, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. Kim, for God's sake, sign them. I repeated, each word an icicle. Or by close of business today, the New York Post will have the highlights, and the police will be at your door to arrest you for the attempted murder of Marjorie Davidson. Your choice. The mention of the Post did it. His career, his reputation, they were the pillars of his identity. Without them, he was nothing. The tears vanished, replaced by a grim, defeated hatred. He looked at Thornton. And if I sign, this goes away. The criminal complaint is put on pause, contingent on your full compliance and a period of demonstrated good behavior. The divorce will proceed, but quietly. On these terms, you will disappear from Kimberly's and Marjorie's lives. Permanently. He was trapped, and he knew it. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the frantic calculation of a man minimizing catastrophic loss. He scanned the separation agreement, his eyes lingering on the clauses, surrendering the house and the money. Each line was a physical wound. Fine, he rasped. He pulled a pen from his pocket. His hand shook so violently he could barely hold it. He scrawled his signature on the last page of the agreement, then on the property transfer deed. The scratches of the pen were the only sound in the room. When he was done, he threw the pen down. It clattered and rolled off the table. He looked at me, his eyes hollow. Happy now. You've won. You've taken everything. I stood up, gathering my empty portfolio. I looked down at him, shrunken in his expensive chair. I didn't take anything. Eric, I'm just taking back what you tried to steal and preventing you from taking a life. I turned to leave. Kimberly. His voice stopped me at the door. It was flat, dead. You'll regret this. I swear to God, you'll regret it. I didn't look back. Marcus opened the door, and Thornton and I walked out, past the stunned faces of the reception staff. We didn't speak in the elevator or the town car. The adrenaline was a deafening roar in my ears, threatening to drown me now that the act was over. Back in Thornton's office, I collapsed into a chair, the tremors starting in my hands. Drink this, Thornton said, handing me a glass of water. You did well, exceptionally well. He's broken, for now. He threatened me. I said, the words sounding distant. He did, and we'll take it seriously. Marcus will stay with you. I've already filed the signed documents with the court. The townhouse is yours. The financial transfers will begin tomorrow. He sat behind his desk, The ball is in his court now. He can accept his defeat and slink away, or he can do something stupid. My money is on the latter. I nodded, sipping the water, trying to steady myself. I had faced the monster and stripped him of his power. I should have felt triumphant. All I felt was exhausted, and a deep, unsettling chill from Eric's final, dead-eyed promise. I went to the rehab facility that afternoon. I needed to see Marjorie, to ground myself in something real. I told her what had happened, omitting Eric's final threat. She listened, her face grave. When I finished, she took both my hands in hers. "My brave, brave girl," she whispered, her eyes shining. "I am so sorry you had to go through that, to face that thing he's become." "It's done," I said, hoping saying it would make it true. That night, back in the townhouse, my townhouse, now that the silence was profound. It was mine, but it was filled with ghosts. I checked the sensors on the burner phone. Nothing. Eric hadn't returned. Marcus was parked in a discreet car down the block. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. At 2 a.m., my personal phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "Unknown. You think you're so smart. You have no idea what you've started. This isn't over." A chill, deeper than any I'd felt in the conference room, seeped into my bones. I didn't reply. I screenshot it and sent it to Thornton on the burner phone. His reply came a minute later. "Thornton, expected. Do not engage. He's testing your resolve. Marcus is alerted." I got up and walked to the window, peering through the blinds at the quiet street. Nothing moved, but the feeling of being watched, of a looming, invisible threat, was back, thicker than ever. Eric was out there, beaten, humiliated, and now, completely unmoored, a man with nothing left to lose. The reckoning was over, but the war, I realized with a sinking heart, was just entering a new, and potentially far more dangerous, phase. The threatening text was the spark in the tinderbox. Eric's signature on those papers hadn't been surrender. It had been a tactical retreat into the shadows. The silence that followed was not peace, but the eye of a hurricane. Thornton's warning echoed in my mind. He's broken. For now. The "for now" was the operative term. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of hypervigilance. Marcus, my quiet sentinel, was a constant presence, a shadow in a sedan down the street or a discreet figure in the building's lobby. The townhouse, now legally mine, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a gilded cage under siege. Every creak of the old floorboards, every hum of the elevator, sent my heart into my throat. I changed the locks, installed a top-tier security system with panic buttons linked directly to a private firm Thornton recommended, and drew the blinds. I was a queen in a fortified castle, waiting for the barbarians to storm the gates. But Thornton wasn't waiting. He was advancing. "The time for defense is over," he said during our next secure call, his voice crisp with purpose. He signaled his intention to continue hostilities. We respond with overwhelming force. We dismantle his life, brick by brick, before he can lay a single hand on yours or Marjorie's. The legal offensive began with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The signed separation agreement was filed with the court, initiating the divorce proceedings. Simultaneously, a civil lawsuit was served to Eric's office, listing him as the defendant and me as the plaintiff, alleging fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and seeking a temporary restraining order based on the threatening text. The lawsuit was a masterpiece of Thornton's craft, dry, precise, and devastating in its detail, referencing the mother's plan documents and the recorded conversations as exhibits to be presented in discovery. The third, and most critical, action was Thornton filing a formal, sworn complaint with the district attorney's office, attaching the evidence packet. He didn't just drop it in a mailbox. He hand-delivered it to an assistant DA he knew from his prosecutor days. a woman named Cora Vance with a reputation for being relentless and media savvy. The criminal case is the leash. Thornton explained to me. It keeps him contained. But we need the court of public opinion to truly neutralize him. A man with no reputation has no power. The court of public opinion was my domain. It was time for Kimberly Davidson to step out of the shadows. I called in a favor from an old Columbia journalism school friend, Ben Carter, now a senior producer at Newsline, a respected nightly news magazine. I didn't give him the whole story, just a tantalizing hint. It's about betrayal, family, attempted murder, and a Wall Street golden boy. And I have the evidence. Ben, smelling the Pulitzer, was at my door with a camera crew within hours, under the guise of interviewing me about caregiver advocacy in the wake of my mother-in-law's tragic accident. The interview took place in Thornton's conference room, not my home. I wore the same black suit from the confrontation, my hair down but severe. Makeup was applied to hide the circles under my eyes, but not the paleness of my skin. I needed to look like what I was, a woman who had been to hell and was walking back, battered but unbroken. Mrs. Davidson, Ben began, his professional mask firmly in place, though I could see the hunger for the story in his eyes. Thank you for speaking with us. You've been through a terrible ordeal. Can you tell us, in your own words, what happened the day your mother-in-law, Marjorie Davidson, was found? I took a steadying breath, looking directly into the camera. I found her unconscious on the bathroom floor of her home, nearly dead from carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty water heater. I kept my voice even. Factual. I performed CPR and called 911. She survived. And in the aftermath of this tragedy, you discovered that it may not have been an accident. Here, I allowed a flicker of pain to cross my face, just for a moment. In the process of handling her affairs, I uncovered evidence that suggested the accident was anything but. I discovered that my husband, Eric Davidson, had been aware of the critical fault in that heater for over a year. Documentation shows he chose not to repair it. I paused, letting the implication hang. I also found plans he had drafted to have his mother declared mentally incompetent, to alter her will, and to systematically disinherit me. Ben leaned forward. These are extraordinary allegations. You're essentially accusing your husband of attempted murder and fraud. I'm not accusing. I'm presenting evidence that I have since turned over to the district attorney's office. I corrected him gently. The picture of sober responsibility. What my husband did, it wasn't about money. Not really. It was about control. About erasing the women in his life who he saw as obstacles to a future he had already written for himself. He didn't see a mother and a wife. He saw assets and liabilities. And your marriage is over. The words were final, clean. The man I married no longer exists. If he ever did, what about the other woman mentioned in some of the documents? A Celia Frommer? I looked down for a moment, then back up, my gaze clear. I won't comment on Ms. Frommer. She is a symptom, not the disease. The disease was a profound moral bankruptcy in my husband. I then deftly pivoted, as Thornton and I had rehearsed. My focus now is on two things: supporting my mother-in-law, Marjorie, in her full recovery, the recovery of both health and spirit, and seeking justice through the proper legal channels. I also hope that by speaking out, other people, especially women and older adults who might be vulnerable to financial or familial coercion, will be encouraged to pay attention, to ask questions, and to trust their instincts. The interview aired 2 nights later. Thornton had also leaked a carefully redacted, but still damning, portion of the mother's plan documents and a transcript of the Celia conversation, with her name bleeped, to a powerhouse business journalist at the Wall Street Journal. The 2 stories broke within hours of each other. The effect was thermonuclear. Newsline, a golden boy's dark plan. Alleged murder for inheritance. Plot, Rock's Upper East Side. Wall Street Journal. Davidson Consulting CEO enmeshed in elder abuse. Fraud scandal. Clients flee. My phone exploded. Or rather, Thornton's office phone did. Mine was silent. A dead brick in a Faraday bag. But the burner phone lit up with updates from Thornton and Savannah. Savannah, holy shit, you're trending. The clip of you saying assets and liabilities is everywhere. You're a goddamn ice queen, and people love it. Thornton, Board of Davidson Consulting has emergency meetings scheduled for 8 a.m. Expect suspension at minimum. DA Vance has issued a statement. We are reviewing the evidence with the utmost seriousness. Well done. I watched it unfold from the sterile safety of a hotel suite Thornton had booked under a pseudonym. Marcus was in the room next door. On the television, my own face looked back at me, calm and resolute. On the financial news networks, pundits dissected the Davidson debacle, talking about fiduciary trust and corporate character. Eric's smiling headshot from the company website was now stamped with the word alleged in bold red letters. The unraveling was swift and public. By noon the next day, Eric was suspended from his own firm. By close of business, 3 major clients had publicly terminated their contracts. The business he had built, the edifice of his identity, was crumbling in real time. Social media was a feeding frenzy. Hashtag Davidson plans and hashtag Golden Boy Gone Bad were hashtags. Memes appeared that his company logo with a mustache and devil horns. Then, the piece de resistance, a statement released by Thornton's office on behalf of Marjorie Davidson. My heart is broken by the actions of my son, Eric. The evidence presented is undeniable. His attempts to harm me and disinherit my beloved daughter-in-law, Kimberly, whom I consider my own daughter, represent a betrayal of the deepest kind. I am fully recovered in mind and spirit, thanks to Kimberly's bravery and quick action. I have taken legal steps to ensure my estate passes solely to her. I have also instructed my attorneys to seek a formal order of protection against my son and to fully support any criminal charges brought by the authorities. My family now is, and will always be, Kimberly. Please respect our privacy as we heal. It was a dagger, aimed with a mother's unerring hand, and it struck the killing blow to Eric's remaining public sympathy. The narrative was now sealed. Greedy, monstrous son versus courageous daughter-in-law and wronged mother. I sat in the quiet hotel room, the glow of the television painting my face blue. I felt no exhilaration, only a deep, weary satisfaction. This was the consequence. This was the cost of what he had done, playing out on a global stage he had coveted. My burner phone vibrated. An unknown number. Again, I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. Voicemail received. Against my better judgment, I put it on speaker. The voice that emerged was unrecognizable at first, slurred, thick with tears and what sounded like cheap whiskey. Kimberly, please, pick up, please. A ragged sob. They're all gone. The board, they fired me. Not suspended. Fired. My partners, they won't return my calls. The bank, they froze the company accounts. My accounts. Another sob. Wet and broken. Celia, she's gone. She gave a statement to the press saying I manipulated her. They're calling me a monster on TV. Kim, a monster. I listened. My face impassive. The mighty Eric Davidson, brought low not by a rival, but by his own documented avarice. You have to stop this. The voice pleaded, desperation turning to a whine. You have to call Thornton. Call the DA. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, a joke that got out of hand. Tell them you were stressed. You made it up. I'll give you anything. The house, the money, it's yours. Just make it stop. Please. Kim, I'm begging you. I have nothing left. The abject groveling was more disturbing than his rage had been. This was the core of him, stripped bare, a petulant child who had broken his most precious toy and now couldn't understand why it wouldn't magically reassemble itself. I picked up the phone. I didn't say anything for a long moment, letting him hear my steady breathing on the line. "Eric?" I said, my voice quiet, calm, utterly devoid of the emotion he was drowning in. "Kim." "Oh, thank God." "Kim, please." The time for begging. I interrupted, my words dropping like stones into a still pool. "Was before you decided to play God with your own mother's life. Before you typed up plans to drug me into submission. Before you looked at the two women who loved you and saw nothing but ledger entries. I was wrong. I was sick. I need help. Not this." He wailed. "You need a lawyer." I said, the ice in my voice absolute. "And a psychiatrist. But not from me. Never from me again." I took a breath. The last one I would ever waste on him. "Enjoy hell, Eric." I ended the call. I blocked the number. Then I opened the tracking app. The signal from the device in his briefcase, which he'd either forgotten or was too drunk to find, pulsed from a budget motel in a rough part of Midtown. Not the Four Seasons, not even a Marriott. The Royal Inn Motel. The final, pathetic dot on the map of his descent. I forwarded the location to Thornton with a note. "He's unraveling. Location attached. Advise increased caution." Thornton's reply was immediate. "Police have issued a bolo for questioning. His lawyer can't find him either. He's officially a missing person. And a person of interest. Stay sharp. A missing person. A fugitive from his own life." The hurricane had passed over him and left only wreckage. I turned off the television. The silence in the room was complete. I should have felt victorious. I had wanted him broken. And he was. I had wanted him to lose everything. And he had. So why did I feel so hollow? The answer came the next morning when I drove to Greenwich to see Marjorie. She was in the sunroom, a blanket over her lap, watching birds at a feeder. She looked up as I entered, and her face, which had grown softer and more peaceful in recent weeks, broke into a radiant, genuine smile. "There's my girl," she said, holding out her arms. I went to her, knelt by her chair, and let her fold me into a hug. She smelled of lavender and soap. A clean, safe smell. I didn't cry. I just leaned into her. This woman who had become my anchor in a world gone mad. I saw the news. She murmured into my hair. "I saw you. You were magnificent. And terrifying. I feel empty." I confessed, the words muffled against her shoulder. She pulled back, cupping my face in her hands. Her eyes, wise and sad, searched mine. "That's because you're not like him. My darling, breaking someone else doesn't build you up. It just leaves a pile of rubble where your heart used to be." She smoothed my hair. "Your victory isn't in his destruction. It's in our survival. It's in you sitting here, with me, alive and free. It's in the life you're going to build from the ashes of the one he tried to burn down." She was right. The hollowness wasn't a flaw. It was the space where vengeance had lived. Now cleared out, it was room to grow something new. My burner phone buzzed. A message from Thornton. "D.A. Vance is convening a grand jury. Indictment likely by end of week. He's facing attempted murder second. Conspiracy, fraud, and a dozen other counts. The noose is tightening. Stay vigilant." I showed the message to Marjorie. She read it, her lips thinning into a firm line. She took my hand, the one holding the phone, and gently closed my fingers around it. "Then we let the law do its work," she said firmly, "and we start living our lives. Together." For the first time since I'd heard that thud in the bathroom, I felt something akin to peace. It wasn't happiness. It was the profound quiet after a long and brutal storm. The fight wasn't over, that the legal battles would drag on for months, maybe years, but the war for our souls was won. We sat there in the sunroom, holding hands, two women who had looked into the ebb their own family had created, and had chosen to build a bridge across it instead of falling in. The public unraveling of Eric Davidson would continue without us. We had better things to do. We had a future to plant in the freshly turned soil of the past. The peace was a fragile, crystalline thing, and it shattered on a Tuesday morning. Marjorie was due to be discharged from the Greenwich facility the following day. We were to move, together, into a leased, secure apartment in the city to a fresh start. I was there, packing her personal items into a suitcase, the sun streaming into the cheerful, sterile room. She was in the common area, saying her goodbyes to a nurse. My personal phone, now reluctantly back in use for logistical purposes, hung. It was the facility's head of security, a retired cop named Donnelly. Mrs. Davidson, you need to come to the front reception. There's a situation. The tone, tight and controlled, sent an electric jolt down my spine. What kind of situation? A man. He's demanding to see Mrs. Marjorie Davidson. Says he's her son. He's not on the approved visitor list. He's agitated. Eric, the word was a cold stone in my gut. He'd found her. Of course he had. The tracker had gone dead days ago. He'd finally found the device. He was unmoored, desperate, and he'd come for the one piece he thought he could still control. His mother. Do not let him near her, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I'm on my way. He is potentially dangerous. Call the local police. Now. I didn't wait for a reply. I dropped the sweater I was folding and ran. The hallway was a blur of beige walls and linoleum. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He wouldn't. Not here. Not in public. But the Eric-eyed face in the conference room was gone. This was the creature left behind, with nothing to lose. As I rounded the corner to the main reception lounge, the scene crystallized. Eric stood in the middle of the tasteful, floral-carpeted room, but he was a grotesque stain on it. His clothes had a wrinkled button-down and khakis that looked slept in. His face was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot and wild, darting around the room like a trapped animal's. Donnelly and another, younger guard stood between him and the hallway that led to the common rooms. I have every right to see my mother, Eric was shouting, spittle flying. You have no authority to keep me from her. She's being held against her will. That woman, my wife, she's poisoned her mind. His voice was too loud, cracking with a hysterical edge. A few staff members and elderly residents looked on, alarmed. Sir, you need to calm down and leave, Donnelly said, his stance wide, hands open but ready. Eric. The word came out flat, cutting through his tirade. He spun towards me. The look in his eyes when they landed on me was pure, undiluted hatred, so intense it was almost physical. You, he hissed. Where is she? What have you done with my mother? She's safe, I said, taking a few steps closer but keeping a wide berth. I needed to draw his focus, to be the lightning rod. You need to leave, Eric. The police are on their way. The police? He let out a ragged, ugly laugh. I'm here to save me mother from you, from your lies and your manipulations. He took a step forward, and the younger guard shifted, blocking his path. Eric ignored him, his gaze locked on me. She's confused. She's sick, and you've locked her up in this. This where Husido get your hands on her money. I'm her next of kin. I'm taking her home where she belongs. It was a pathetic, twisted mirror of the truth. He was projecting his own crimes onto me with the fervor of the truly deluded. I saw the calculation warring with the madness in his eyes. This wasn't just a desperate grab, it was a performance. He was creating a scene, trying to establish a narrative for any witnesses. The concerned son versus the wicked daughter-in-law. The only one who tried to harm her is in this room. Eric, I said, keeping my voice low and steady, a counterpoint to his shrieking. I needed him to escalate. I needed him to say it. We both know that. The emails, the plans, the let it run its course. Do you want to explain that to everyone here? A flicker of panic beneath the rage. He hadn't expected me to be so calm, so public. He'd expected cowering, tears, a private confrontation he could dominate. Lies. Digital forgeries. You're insane. And you've made up a fantasy to steal what's mine. Nothing was ever yours. I shot back, the ice in my voice finally showing. It was Marjorie's, and she has made her choice. You are not welcome in her life. Something in him snapped. The performative anger gave way to something primal. Frantic. She is my mother, he roared, and with a sudden, shocking burst of strength, he shoved the younger guard aside. His hand dove into the pocket of his khakis. Time seemed to slow, crystallizing into a series of stark images. The glint of something metallic. Donnelly's shout. The gasp from an onlooker. He didn't pull out a gun. It was a small, silver pocket knife, the blade snapping open with a definitive click. It looked absurd, theatrical, but the intention in his eyes was deadly serious. You've taken everything, he whispered, the rage gone, replaced by a terrifying, hollow certainty. He took a step towards the hallway where Marjorie must be. I'm taking her. You're not stopping me. In that moment, all strategy, all cold calculation vanished. There was only the image of Marjorie, confused and fragile, facing this deranged version of her son. There was only the blade. I didn't think. I moved. I stepped directly into his path, putting myself between him and the hallway. You're not going anywhere near her. He stared at me, the knife held loosely at his side, as if surprised I was still there. Get out of my way. Kimberly. No. His face contorted. He raised the knife, not to stab, but to threaten, to wave me aside. I said, move. Put the knife down. Eric. My voice didn't waver. I held my ground. My eyes locked on his. Inside, I was screaming, but on the outside, I was a wall. It's over. The police are coming. The DA is convening a grand jury. You've lost. This. I gestured at the knife. A minute. Contemptuous flick of my hand. This is just the final, pathetic act. The contempt, more than anything else, broke him. The last vestige of his crumbling persona fell away. The knife hand dropped slightly. His shoulders slumped, not in surrender, but in a profound, soul-crushing defeat. The wild eyes filled with tears of sheer, impotent fury. You ruined me. He choked out, the words bubbling with venom. You took my mother, my money, my name. You turned me into a joke, a monster in the papers. He took a shuddering step closer, the knife forgotten, pointing at the floor. The smell of unwashed skin and despair hit me. You were supposed to be weak. You were supposed to break. Why couldn't you just break? The confession, raw and ugly, hung in the air. It was all there. The entitlement, the bafflement that his prey had fought back. Before I could answer, a voice, frail but diamond sharp, cut through the tension. Eric. We both turned. Marjorie stood at the mouth of the hallway, supported by the nurse she'd been speaking to. Her face was the color of parchment, but her back was straight. She looked at her son, and what I saw in her eyes extinguished any last ember of pity I might have harbored. It wasn't hatred. It was a grief so deep it had emptied into a vast, quiet nothingness. She was looking at a stranger. Mom. Eric breathed. The word a child's plea. The knife clattered to the floral carpet. Harmless. He took a step towards her, his hands coming up, palms open. Mom. It's me. She's been lying to you. She's turned you against me. Let me take you home. Please. He was crying now, real tears carving paths through the grime on his cheeks. He fell to his knees, not in a tactical move, but as if his legs could no longer hold him. He crawled forward a foot, his arms outstretched. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was sick. Please, forgive me. You're all I have left. It was the most human, the most vulnerable I had ever seen him. And it was 1,000 times more terrible than his rage. Marjorie watched him crawl. Her jaw trembled. For a second, I was afraid the mother's love, that deep, unconditional well, would resurface, that she would see her little boy, lost and hurting. She took a slow, deep breath. She looked from his broken form on the floor to me, standing resolute between them. She saw the security guards, the stunned staff, the symbol of the life he had tried to end. Her gaze returned to her son. The tremor in her jaw stilled. Her eyes, those same blue eyes he had inherited, turned to chips of winter ice. "I have no son," she said. The words were clear, quiet, and absolute. They echoed in the silent lounge. "Officers," she said, looking past Eric to where 2 Greenwich police officers had just entered, their hands on their holsters. "Please take him away." The finality of it was devastating. Eric froze on his knees, his arms still outstretched. The plea died on his lips. He stared at his mother, and I watched as the last flicker of light to the hope for redemption, for maternal absolution, that guttered and went out in his eyes. What was left was a hollow, yawning void. His mouth opened and closed silently. A low, animal moan escaped him. The officers moved in quickly, professionally. "Sir, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for trespassing, disorderly conduct, and threatening with a weapon." He didn't resist. He offered his hands as if they belonged to someone else. As they cuffed him, he kept his eyes on Marjorie. She held his gaze, her face a mask of serene, unbreakable sorrow. There was no triumph in it, only a necessary, surgical amputation. As they led him away, he stumbled, his legs not working properly. Just before they passed through the glass doors, he twisted his head, his eyes finding me one last time. The hatred was gone. The madness was gone. There was only a vast, incomprehensible emptiness. "Kimberly," he whispered, the sound lost in the hum of the facility. And then he was gone. The silence that followed was profound. A nurse rushed to Marjorie's side as her knees buckled. I got there first, catching her, lowering her gently into a nearby armchair. She was shaking, great, racking tremors that had nothing to do with the cold. "It's done, Marjorie," I murmured, kneeling beside her, chafing her cold hands. "It's over. He can't hurt you anymore." She looked at me, the ice melting, leaving only a deep, weary pain. "I know," she whispered, "but, oh, my girl, the boy I loved. I had to bury him today, in front of everyone." A single, perfect tear rolled down her cheek. That was the hardest thing I have ever done. I understood then. Her victory wasn't in his arrest. It was in that sentence. "I have no son.it" was the ultimate act of self-preservation, and it had cost her a piece of her own soul. Later, at the police station, I gave my statement. Thornton was there, an immovable presence. The Greenwich DA, coordinating with Vance's office in the city, was giddy. Eric's little stunt had handed them a gift-wrapped conviction. Attempted kidnapping, assault with a weapon, witness intimidation, that all on top of the mountain of white-collar and attempted murder charges. His bail was revoked. He was remanded, deemed a flight risk and a danger. As I signed the last page of my statement, a detective approached. "Mrs. Davidson?" We inventoried his possessions from the motel where he was staying. He had this on him. He placed a clear evidence bag on the table. Inside was a small, crumpled photograph. It was of Eric as a boy, maybe 8, grinning with a gap-toothed smile, perched on Marjorie's lap in front of a Christmas tree. Her face was radiant, smiling down at him. I stared at it, a lump rising in my throat. The detective's face was carefully neutral. "We thought you or Mrs. Davidson might want it." Eventually, I looked at Thornton. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't evidence. It was just a ghost. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. I took the bag, the plastic cool in my hand. I didn't open it. I slipped it into my purse. A tiny, leaden weight. The war was over. The monster was in a cage. We had won. So why did it feel like we were standing in a field of ashes, holding the charred remains of a family? I drove back to the empty townhouse that night. The silence a physical presence. in the stark light of the kitchen. I took the photo out of the evidence bag. I looked at the happy boy, the adoring mother, a world before the rot set in. I didn't frame it. I didn't burn it. I walked to the fireplace, and I placed it gently on the cold, clean grate. I left it there, a relic, a tombstone for the love that had died long before the man was led away in cuffs. The hollow feeling was back, wider and deeper than before. We had survived. We had even prevailed. But the cost was etched on Marjorie's face, and now lived in the quiet space where my fear of Eric used to be. Victory, I was learning, was not a destination. It was just the beginning of a different, quieter kind of endurance. 3 months later, the autumn sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our new apartment, painting golden rectangles on the polished hardwood. It was a penthouse in a modern, secure building on the Upper West Side, all clean lines and quiet luxury. There were no ghosts here, no hissing pipes, no echoes of old arguments, no hidden devices, just light, space, and a profound, hard-won peace. I was at the kitchen island, my laptop open to a spreadsheet, not a forensic accounting report, but a budget for the newly established James Marjorie Davidson Foundation. Marjorie, across from me, was meticulously addressing envelopes for the inaugural fundraiser. Her hands were steady, her color good. The physical therapist came 3 times a week, and the haunted look in her eyes was slowly being replaced by a thoughtful, sometimes wry, calm. The burner phone, now relegated to a drawer, buzzed only with updates from Jack Thornton. The final one had come yesterday. Thornton, plea deal accepted, 12 to 18 years at Ossining. Fraud and conspiracy charges. Attempted murder charge reduced to reckless endangerment. Given the CO was ultimately from a verifiable mechanical fault, his negligence, but not direct tampering. He took the deal. He'll be eligible for parole in 8. Wanted you to hear it from me first. I'd read the message aloud to Marjorie. She'd paused, her pen hovering over an envelope. She'd nodded once. A sharp, decisive movement. Good, was all she'd said, and went back to her task. There was no joy in it, only a grim finality. The law had done its work. The son she'd buried in that rehabilitation facility lounge was now, officially, a prisoner. My divorce was finalized a week prior. Quiet, anticlimactic. A judge's signature on papers that felt less like liberation and more like the official stamp on a truth I'd already known. The townhouse was sold. The proceeds, along with the bulk of Marjorie's that now my trust, seeded the foundation. Its mission was Marjorie's idea, providing safety audits and emergency alert systems for low-income seniors, and legal aid for victims of familial financial abuse. We called it the Silver Lining Fund. It was our alchemy, turning his greed into a shield for others. My personal phone buzzed. My real one. A text from Savannah. You ready for tonight? Cinderella? Don't you dare wear black. Think Phoenix, not funeral. Tonight was the Foundation's launch gala. My first public appearance since the Nuzlany interview. A part of me wanted to hide, to let the lawyers and the board handle it. But Marjorie had put her foot down. We're not hiding, she'd said, her tone brooking no argument. We are living, and we are helping people. That is what we show them. So, I was going, in a deep emerald gown that made me feel stronger than any suit of armor. The gala was a blur of soft lights, clinking glasses, and a low hum of conversation that paused whenever Marjorie or I moved through the room. I saw the look-stuck curiosity, pity, admiration, a few whispers behind hands. I kept my chin up, my smile polite but distant. I was no longer the victim in the news story. I was the host, the co-founder. I was giving a brief, scripted thank you speech when I saw him, a man leaning against a pillar near the back, watching me. He was tall, with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard that gave him a distinguished, approachable look. I recognized him, David Chin, The estate lawyer from the firm that had handled my parents' affairs years ago. He'd sent a discreet, supportive note after the news broke, offering his firm's services pro bono if needed. I'd thanked him, but hadn't taken him up on it. Having Thornton, he was here tonight, a significant check from his firm in hand. After the speech, as I was extricating myself from a well-meaning but overly effusive donor, he appeared at my elbow. A powerful speech. "Ms. Davidson," he said, his voice warm. "The work you and your mother-in-law are doing is vital. Thank you, Mr. Chin, and thank you for your firm's generous support. David, please." He smiled, and it reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "And the support is genuine. I knew your parents. Slightly. Good people. I'm not surprised their daughter is doing good things. Even after." He trailed off, gracefully avoiding the minefield. Even after. I finished for him, offering a small, genuine smile of my own. It felt strange on my face, unpracticed. We talked for a few minutes, about the foundation's logistics, about the surprising difficulty of sourcing reliable, affordable home sensors. It was easy, normal. There was no subtext, no predatory curiosity in his gaze. He was just a decent man talking about charitable work. When he excused himself to greet a colleague, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in over a year. Later, near midnight, I stood on the balcony of our penthouse. The city's jewel box lights spread out below. The emerald dress was folded over a chair. I was in sweats, my feet bare. The quiet up here was different from the silence of the old townhouse. This was a peaceful quiet, a chosen one. The sliding door whispered open. Marjorie joined me, wrapped in a thick robe. She handed me a mug of chamomile tea. "You were magnificent tonight," she said, leaning on the railing beside me. I was terrified, I admitted, sipping the tea. All those eyes, they saw a survivor, a leader. She looked at me, her face softened by the ambient city glow. I saw my daughter. The word, spoken with such simple certainty, undid me. A warm tear escaped, tracing a path down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. I never thought. Marjorie began, her voice barely above a whisper as she gazed at the skyline. "After Arthur died, I thought my family was set. My son, my daughter-in-law. I never thought I'd have to find a new kind of peace, a new kind of family. Not at my age." I slipped my arm around her thin shoulders. She leaned into me, her head resting against mine. "We make our own peace, Mom," I said, repeating the phrase that had become our mantra, "and our own silver linings." She nodded against me. "We do, don't we?" We stood there in the comfortable silence, two women who had walked through fire and emerged, not unscarred, but unbroken. The past was a closed book, heavy but shelved. The future was the foundation. This apartment, the quiet mornings together, the slow, careful possibility of a life beyond survival. Down in the sparkling grid of the city, life pulsed on. Up here, on our balcony, we had built a small, bright island of safety. It wasn't a happy ending, that those are for fairy tales. It was a hard one beginning, and for the first time in a very long time, the dawn ahead looked not like a threat, but like a promise. The silver lining wasn't just in the foundation's name. It was here, in the quiet solidarity of shared strength, in the space where trauma had been, now slowly being filled with something new, something ours. We had not just survived the storm. We had learned to dance in the aftermath. The first anniversary of the James Marjorie Davidson Foundation Gala was held at the Museum of Modern Art's Sculpture Garden. The late spring air was soft. The city sounds a distant hum beyond the glass walls. This time, the nervous flutter in my stomach was purely about fundraising goals, not personal survival. I moved through the crowd with an ease that still surprised me. The emerald dress was gone. Tonight, I wore a simple, elegant, sheathed the color of midnight. I caught snippets of conversation not about scandals, but about grant applications, sensor technology, policy initiatives. My history was no longer the headline. Our work was. Kimberly. A moment. I turned to see David Chin, looking sharp in a tuxedo, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He'd become a steady, patient presence over the year. Not a suitor, not exactly that more of a harbor light, showing a shore I wasn't yet ready to sail to, but whose existence was a comfort. He'd never pushed, only been consistently, kindly there. David, thank you for coming. I took the glass. Are you kidding? We're funding 3 new caseworkers through you. Best investment my firm made all year. He smiled, his eyes warm. You look incredibly pleased with yourself. And you should be. I was. I let myself feel it. The foundation had already assisted over 200 families, installed safety systems in 50 buildings, and funded legal victories that set precedents. It was a tangible good, built from the ashes of a tangible evil. It's Marjorie's night. Really? I said, nodding to where she held court by a Calder Mobile. She was in a vibrant blue suit, her silver hair styled in a chic bob. She was laughing at something the museum director said, the sound clear and genuine. She'd found a late-in-life calling as a formidable advocate. Her social clout and personal story a powerful combination. She's a force, David agreed. But so are you. In a quieter way. He glanced at me, a question in his eyes he wouldn't voice. How are you? Really? I considered the easy, social answer. Then I gave him the true one. I'm well. Some days are just days. Others. I walk by the old neighborhood and my heart still pounds. But most days, I'm just a woman who runs a foundation, who has dinner with her mom, who's thinking about taking a pottery class because it sounds joyfully, gloriously useless. I took a sip of champagne. It's a good life, one I built. That's the only kind that lasts, he said softly, clinking his glass gently against mine. Later, after the speeches, Marjorie's was witty and moving. Mine was short and grateful. I found her on a quieter terrace. Tired? I asked, handing her the shawl she'd discarded. Blissfully, she sighed, wrapping it around her shoulders. She looked at the glittering skyline. Your father would have loved this. You know, the foundation. He was always softer than he let on. She paused. Eric's parole hearing is in 6 months. The name hung between us. No longer a knife, but a cold stone. We'd been notified by the Victims Services Unit. I'd met with the parole board liaison. My statement already prepared. He is a master manipulator who planned the murder of his own mother for financial gain. His rehabilitation, in my assessment, is impossible. Marjorie had written her own, simpler statement. I fear for my safety and my daughter's safety if he is released. I know. I said, will you go to the hearing? Yes. Will you? She was silent for a long time. No, she said finally, her voice firm. I said everything I needed to say to him. In that room, a year ago, my statement is on paper. My presence would be for him, a connection, and I have no connection left to give. She turned to me, her eyes clear in the moonlight. You don't have to go either. You know, Thornton can represent our interests. I know, but I want to look him in the eye. One last time, from behind the glass. I want to see the man in the cage, and remember the woman who put him there. Then I want to walk out, and never think of him again. It was the final piece of my own closure, a ritual I needed to perform. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Then, that's what you'll do. 6 months later, I did. The hearing room was bland, bureaucratic. Eric was let in, wearing prison khakis. He was thinner, his shoulders slumped. The arrogant gloss was long gone, sanded down to a dull, institutionalized blankness. He recited his prepared rehabilitation speech to the board members, his voice a monotone. He talked about therapy, about remorse, about a job offer in his cousin's auto body shop upstate. When it was my turn, I stood at the podium. I didn't read my prepared statement. I looked directly at him. He met my gaze, and for a second, the blankness flickered. I saw a faint, residual spark of the old hatred, then a deeper, weary resentment, and finally, a hollow nothing. That man, I said, my voice calm and carrying, pointing at Eric, premeditated the murder of his mother for money. When that failed, he planned to chemically subdue his wife to steal her freedom and her sanity. He is not a man who made a mistake. He is a man whose moral compass is fundamentally broken. Releasing him would be an insult to the concept of justice and a tangible danger to the two women he already tried to destroy. I sat down. I didn't look at him again. The board deliberated for 10 minutes. Parole was denied. Next hearing in 3 years. As I walked out of the facility into the bland upstate sunshine, I felt it. A final, clean severance. The last thread. Cut. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove back to the city. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. That evening, I was in our apartment, kneading lumpy clay on a wheel in the spare room I'd turned into a studio. My hands were a mess. The vase was lopsided, and I was completely, utterly absorbed. Marjorie appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. A masterpiece, she declared, eyeing the collapsing form. It's terrible. I laughed, not stopping. And I love it. She smiled. That full, real smile that had become so common. David called while you were out. He secured a matching grant from the Feldstein family. It's a big one. That's wonderful, I said, meaning it. The foundation. The work.it was my purpose now, but it wasn't my whole life. He also asked. She continued, her tone deliberately casual. If you might be free for dinner next Friday. Not a foundation meeting. A dinner. He mentioned that new Italian place in the village. I kept my eyes on the spinning clay, centering it again with my muddy hands. A year ago, the idea would have sent me into a panic. Now, I considered it. David was kind. He was safe. He'd seen me at my worst and hadn't flinched. He represented a possibility, not a necessity, but a choice. Maybe, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. Let me check my busy schedule of destroying perfectly good clay. Marjorie chuckled and walked away, leaving me to my messy, imperfect creation. I looked out the window at the deepening twilight. The first stars pricking through the violet over the Hudson. The ghosts were silent. The fear was a memory. The life ahead was mine, a mosaic of meaningful work. Hard-won family, quiet evenings, and the tentative, thrilling possibility of a new connection, entered into from a place of strength, not need. The storm had passed. The silver lining wasn't just a fund or a metaphor. It was this, the peace in my own heart, the warmth in the next room, the wet clay on my hands, and the whole, wide-open future spinning patiently before me, waiting to be shaped.